Kyle Morrison adjusted his blue diplomatic uniform and checked his tablet one more time. The meeting room on the Zephyrian flagship was huge and cold. Metal walls curved up to a ceiling that seemed to go on forever. Strange lights cast purple, shadows everywhere. He sat across from War Commander Threshkar at a table that looked like it was carved from one giant piece of black stone. The Zephyrian leader was 8 feet tall with a body covered in hard, shiny plates that clicked when he moved. His forearms ended in claws that could probably cut through steel. 2 large eyes sat on top of his head like dark jewels. Dr. Amanda Cole sat next to Kyle, her hands busy with a small scanner that beeped quietly. She was the team's expert on alien life forms. Her brown hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and she wore the same blue uniform as Kyle. Every few seconds she would glance at her device and frown. "The readings are strange," Amanda whispered to Kyle. "There's something big on this ship, something alive." Kyle nodded but kept his eyes on Threshkar. The alien commander had been talking for 20 minutes about how powerful the Zephyrian Empire was. His voice came through the translation device as a low growl. "Human Morrison," Threshkar said, his mandibles clicking. "Your species is new to this part of space. You do not understand how things work here." "We're willing to learn," Kyle replied with a smile. "That's why we came to meet with you." Threshkar's claws tapped against the stone table. The sound was like knives on glass. "Learning requires accepting your place. All species must know where they stand." Kyle felt Amanda tense beside him. Her scanner was beeping faster now. "What exactly are you suggesting?" Kyle asked. The war commander leaned forward. His breath smelled like metal and old meat. "Your colonies on the outer rim. The 3 planets your people call New Boston, Prairie View, and Cedar Falls. You will give them to us." Kyle blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "Those worlds now belong to the Zephyrian Empire. Your people may stay, but they will work for us. They will follow our laws. They will pay taxes to our government." Amanda's scanner was beeping so fast it almost sounded like one long tone. She grabbed Kyle's arm. "There's definitely something here. Something big and dangerous." Kyle kept his voice calm. "Commander Threshkar, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We came here to discuss trade agreements and friendship between our peoples. We're not here to surrender our colonies." The other Zephyrians in the room began to move. Their claws extended from their hands with soft sliding sounds. Their eyes focused on Kyle and Amanda, like hunters looking at prey. Threshkar stood up too, his full height. The armor plates on his chest expanded, making him look even bigger. "There is no misunderstanding, human. This is how first contact works. We tell you the terms. You accept them. Everyone lives in peace." "And if we don't accept?" Kyle asked. The war commander's mandibles spread wide in what might have been a smile. "All species accept in the end. Some just need more convincing than others." Kyle looked around the room. There were 12 Zephyrians total, all armed with weapons that looked like they could cut through the hull of a spaceship. But Kyle had been in tough spots before. He had grown up on Frontier Station, where wild animals and harsh weather were daily problems. His father had taught him that staying calm was the most important thing when facing danger. "We appreciate your offer," Kyle said, standing up slowly. "But humans prefer partnerships to surrendering. We believe both sides should benefit from any agreement." Threshkar's eyes narrowed to thin slits. "Your people clearly do not understand their situation. You are one small species in a galaxy full of empires that have existed for thousands of years. You have no allies, no protection, no power to resist what we demand." Amanda's device was now making a constant high-pitched whine. She looked at the reading, and her face went pale. "Kyle, we need to leave now. Whatever's on this ship, it's massive and it's getting agitated." But before Kyle could respond, Threshkar raised one of his 4 arms. The other Zephyrians moved to block the exits. Their weapons hummed with energy. "Leaving is no longer an option," the war commander said. "You will witness something that will help you understand why resistance is pointless. Every species that has seen what I am about to show you has reconsidered their position." Kyle felt his heart rate increase, but he kept his expression neutral. "What are you planning to show us?" Threshkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. It sounded like laughter. Our greatest achievement, the perfect weapon. A creature bred over centuries to be the ultimate predator. Nothing in the known galaxy can stand against it. Amanda grabbed Kyle's arm tighter. Her scanner was now flashing red warning lights. The biosignatures are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's not natural. It's been engineered. Engineered for what? Kyle asked. Threshkar moved toward a control panel on the far wall. His claws danced over buttons and switches. For ending arguments like this one. For showing stubborn species what happens when they refuse to see reason. The floor beneath their feet began to vibrate. Kyle could hear machinery starting up somewhere deep in the ship. Lights flickered on along the walls, revealing passages and chambers that had been hidden in shadow. You see, Human Morrison, Threshkar continued, we have tried diplomacy with your kind. We have been patient and reasonable. But your people seem to think they are special, different from all the others who came before. Kyle squared his shoulders. Maybe we are different. The war commander's laugh was like grinding metal. They all think that at first. They all believe they are unique. But in the end, they all make the same choice. They all choose to live rather than die pointlessly. Amanda's scanner let out one long, final beep and then went silent. She stared at the device with wide eyes. Kyle, the readings just went beyond anything I've ever seen. Whatever's down there, it's waking up. Threshkar pressed a final button on the control panel. Deep in the ship, something roared. The sound was so loud and terrifying that it made the metal walls shake. Kyle felt it in his bones, in his teeth, in the center of his chest. Now, Threshkar said, his eyes glowing with satisfaction, you will meet the Drakthul, and then we will discuss your colonies again. The Zephyrian guards pushed Kyle and Amanda down a long hallway. The walls were covered in deep scratches that looked like claw marks. Some of the grooves were so deep that Kyle could put his whole hand inside them. The air smelled like old blood and fear. What is this place? Amanda asked, running her fingers along one of the scratches. The rendering chamber, Threshkar said from behind them. This is where we bring species that need education about their place in the galaxy. They walked through several doorways, each one bigger than the last. Kyle noticed that the metal around each doorframe was bent and twisted. Something very large and very strong had passed this way many times. Finally, they entered a huge room that looked like an arena. The ceiling was at least 100 feet high. Rows of seats went up the walls on all sides, but most of them were empty. Only a few Zephyrians sat in the protected areas behind thick glass barriers. The floor of the arena was covered in sand, but Kyle could see dark stains underneath. The sand had been changed many times, but it never quite covered everything. Amanda pulled out a backup scanner from her belt. It immediately started beeping. The entire room is saturated with stress hormones, she whispered to Kyle. Dozens of different species. This place has seen a lot of fear. Threshkar walked to a raised platform that overlooked the arena floor. Other Zephyrian officers joined him, all of them moving quickly to get behind the safety barriers. Kyle noticed that even these fierce warriors looked nervous. Human Morrison, Threshkar called down to them. You stand now in the demonstration zone. This is where visitors learn about Zephyrian power. This is where they decide if they want to live or die. Kyle looked around the arena. There were no weapons anywhere. No shields or barriers between him and whatever was coming. Just open space and sand that had soaked up too much blood over the years. You're really going to let some animal loose? On unarmed diplomats, Kyle asked. The Drakthul is not just any animal, Threshkar replied. It is the perfect hunter. We have spent 800 years breeding it, changing it, making it into something that evolution never could have created on its own. Amanda's scanner was going crazy. She stared at the readings and shook her head. Kyle, the electromagnetic activity below us is incredible. Whatever's down there has a nervous system unlike anything I've ever studied. Threshkar pressed a button on his control panel. The floor in the center of the arena began to open like a huge metal flower. Kyle could see darkness below, but also lights moving around. Not electric lights, something that glowed on its own. Observe, Threshkar announced. What your species will face if you continue to resist our reasonable demands. The opening in the floor grew wider. Kyle heard sounds coming from below, scratching, breathing, something moving around in a space that was way too small for it. The sounds were getting louder as whatever was down there realized the way out was finally open. In 8 centuries of demonstrations, Threshakar continued, no species has ever maintained their resistance after witnessing the Drakthul. Most surrender immediately. The smart ones beg for mercy. Amanda moved closer to Kyle. Her scanner was flashing so many warning lights that it looked like a small firework. The creature's heart rate is increasing. Its body temperature is rising. It knows it's about to hunt. Kyle felt his own heart beating faster, but not from fear, from excitement. He had grown up around dangerous animals on Frontier Station. His family had run a wildlife preserve for creatures that other colonies considered too dangerous to handle. He had learned early that most monsters were just animals that people didn't understand. How big is it? Kyle asked. Threshkar's mandibles clicked with pleasure. 12 feet tall, 6 limbs each ending in claws that can cut through battleship armor. Teeth made of crystallized carbon, skin that changes color to match its surroundings, eyes that can see in complete darkness. Sounds impressive, Kyle said, and he meant it. The war commander paused, looking confused by Kyle's tone. He had expected fear, maybe begging. Instead, the human sounded like he was looking forward to meeting the creature. Something began to emerge from the opening. First, Kyle saw claws gripping the edge of the hole. They were huge, easily a foot long, and they gleamed like polished knives. Then came an arm covered in plates that shifted from black to dark green as Kyle watched. The camouflage adaptation alone is fascinating, Amanda said, completely focused on her scanner. The muscle density readings suggest incredible strength. More of the creature appeared. A second arm, then a third, then a fourth. Kyle realized it had 6 limbs total, just like Threshakar had said. Each arm was as thick as Kyle's entire body, and covered in natural armor that looked like it could stop bullets. The Drakthul has never been defeated in combat, Threshakar announced. It has never failed to kill its target. It has never shown mercy or hesitation. The creature's head came into view, and Kyle had to admit it was intimidating. 2 large, eyes on flexible stalks moved independently, scanning the arena. The mouth was full of teeth that looked like they had been carved from diamonds. When it breathed, Kyle could see that even its tongue had sharp edges. But Kyle had seen scary animals before. The rock bears on Frontier Station were 8 feet tall and had claws that could dig through stone. The shadow cats could turn nearly invisible and had reflexes faster than human eyes could follow. The acid spitters could dissolve metal with their saliva, and Kyle's family had worked with all of them. It's beautiful, Amanda said, staring at the creature with scientific wonder. Look at the way its armor plates overlap. And those eyes, the range of motion is incredible. The Drakthul pulled itself completely out of the hole and stood to its full height. Kyle had to crane his neck to see its head. The creature was definitely built for killing. Every part of its body was designed to hunt, catch, and destroy prey. But Kyle noticed something else. The way the creature moved was careful, almost uncertain. It kept looking around the arena like it was confused, its eyes fixed on Kyle and Amanda. But instead of attacking immediately, it just stared. Why isn't it moving? One of the Zephyrian officers asked. It is analyzing its prey, Threshakar explained, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. The Drakthul studies its target before striking. This is normal behavior. Kyle took a step forward. The creature's eyes tracked his movement, but it didn't react aggressively. If anything, it seemed curious. How long has it been since this thing had any real interaction? Kyle asked. Interaction? Threshakar sounded confused. It is a weapon. It requires no interaction. Amanda looked up from her scanner. Kyle, its stress levels are actually decreasing. That's not normal predator behavior. The Drakthul tilted its head to one side, still watching Kyle. The human diplomat smiled and took another step closer. Hello there, Kyle said in a gentle voice. You're quite something, aren't you? The Drakthul stood perfectly still for a moment as if it couldn't believe what it was hearing. Then it opened its mouth and let out a roar that shook the entire arena. The sound was designed to paralyze prey with pure terror. Kyle felt it in every bone of his body. Instead of falling to his knees in fear, Kyle's face lit up with delight. "Oh, wow," he said, clapping his hands together. "That's amazing. Amanda, are you getting audio recordings of this?" Amanda was frantically working with her scanner, but she was grinning too. "The vocal cords alone must be incredible. The frequency range is beyond anything in my databases." Threshkar stared down at them from his safe platform. This was not how demonstrations usually went. Most species either fainted, begged for mercy, or tried to run when they heard the Drakthul's roar. The creature seemed as confused as the war commander. It roared again, louder this time, extending all 6 sets of claws to their full length. The claws gleamed under the arena lights like curved swords. "Look at those claws," Kyle said, taking another step closer. "The engineering is perfect. Each one is designed for a different type of cut." "Kyle," Amanda said, reading her scanner, "its body language is all wrong for a predator. It's not preparing to attack. It's trying to understand why we're not running." The Drakthul moved closer, lowering its head to get a better look at these strange creatures that didn't act like prey. Its eyes, each one the size of Kyle's head, examined them carefully. Up close, Kyle could see that the eyes weren't just black. They had flecks of gold and silver that caught the light. "Your eyes are beautiful," Kyle said softly, the same tone he would use with a nervous animal. "You're just trying to figure us out, aren't you?" From the platform above, Threshkar's voice crackled with anger and confusion. "Attack them. Destroy the humans." The Drakthul glanced up at the war commander, then back at Kyle and Amanda. It made a sound that was softer than its roar, almost like a question. "I think it's trying to communicate," Amanda said, adjusting settings on her scanner. "The vocalizations have pattern and structure. This isn't just animal noise." Kyle slowly extended his hand toward the creature, palm up, fingers relaxed. It was a gesture he had used countless times with frightened animals back home. "Easy there, big guy. Nobody's going to hurt you." The Drakthul stared at Kyle's hand. Its armor plates shifted color from dark green to a lighter shade with blue streaks. One of its smaller arms reached out, stopping just short of touching Kyle's fingers. "Fascinating," Amanda breathed. "The color change correlates with decreased stress hormones. I think the blue pattern might indicate curiosity." Threshkar was pressing buttons frantically on his control panel. "Initiate aggression protocols. Activate the pain stimulus." Somewhere in the creature's body, devices activated. Kyle could see small lights blinking under the Drakthul's skin. The creature's eyes widened, and it made a sound of pain and confusion. Its claws extended again, and its armor plates turned to angry red color. "They're torturing it," Amanda said, her voice filled with horror. "Those lights are some kind of implants. They're causing it pain to make it attack." Kyle felt a surge of anger, but he kept his voice calm for the creature's sake. "Hey, it's okay, I know it hurts, but you don't have to attack us." The Drakthul was clearly in pain, but it was fighting against the impulses the implants were trying to create. It shook, its massive head back and forth trying to clear its thoughts. "This is impossible," one of the Zephyrian officers said. "The pain conditioning has never failed before." "Perhaps we need to increase the intensity," another suggested. "No," Threshkar growled. "Full activation. Maximum aggression protocols, the RIU." Lights under the creature's skin began flashing faster. The Drakthul roared in pain and anger, its claws swinging at the air. But even in its agony, it was careful not to strike at Kyle or Amanda. Kyle's heart broke watching the magnificent creature suffer. On Frontier Station, his family had rescued animals from circuses and fighting rings. He recognized the signs of a creature that had been abused but still retained its essential nature. "Amanda, can your scanner detect the frequency of those implants?" "Already on it," she said, fingers flying over her device. "Got it. They're using neural disruptors on a very specific wavelength." Kyle pulled out his communication device and quickly adjusted its settings. Within seconds, he was broadcasting a counter frequency designed to interfere with the implant's signals. The effect was immediate. The flashing lights under the Drakthul's skin began to flicker and fade. The creature's roars of pain became confused. Whimpers then finally stopped altogether. "What are you doing?" Threshkar demanded. "Helping," Kyle said simply. The Drakthul looked around the arena with clearer eyes. Without the constant pain and artificial aggression, it seemed to see its surroundings differently. Its armor plates shifted to a soft green color with gold highlights. It looked at Kyle and made that questioning sound again. "That's better, isn't it?" Kyle said gently. "Now we can actually meet properly." Amanda was recording everything with her scanner. "Kyle, this creature shows signs of advanced intelligence. The Zephyrians haven't just bred a weapon. They've created a sentient being and then tortured it into compliance." The Drakthul approached them slowly, no longer driven by artificial aggression or pain. Up close, Kyle could see scars on its armor where the implants had been installed. Some of the scars were old, suggesting the creature had been suffering for a very long time. "How long have you been in pain?" Kyle asked softly. The creature tilted its head, as if it understood the question but couldn't remember a time without hurt. From above, Threshkar was screaming orders at his technicians. "Restore the control systems, activate backup protocols," but Kyle's interference had done more than just block the current signals. It had burned out several of the implant circuits entirely. For the first time in its life, the Drakthul was free to choose its own actions, and its choice was remarkable. The massive creature carefully lowered itself until it was sitting on the arena floor, bringing its head down to Kyle's eye level. Its armor plates showed patterns of blue and gold that Amanda's scanner identified as contentment and curiosity. "Hello," Kyle said, smiling. "I'm Kyle, and this is Amanda. What should we call you?" The Drakthul made a series of soft sounds, almost musical. Amanda's scanner translated them as something close to gratitude. "I think," Amanda said, watching her readings in amazement, "it's trying to thank us." From his platform, Threshkar watched in growing horror as his ultimate weapon, the creature that had terrorized dozens of species into submission, gently extended one clawed finger toward the human diplomat. Kyle reached out and carefully touched the tip of the claw with his own finger, completing a gesture of greeting that crossed the boundaries between species. "Pleased to meet you too," Kyle said. Kyle sat cross-legged on the arena floor, speaking softly to the Drakthul like he was talking to an old friend. The massive creature had settled into a comfortable position, its 6 arms folded in a way that looked almost relaxed. Its armor plates continued to show those soft blue and gold patterns that Amanda had identified as contentment. "The scarring suggests surgical implantation at a young age," Amanda said, walking slowly around the creature while taking readings. "Kyle, this poor thing has been in constant pain since it was probably just a baby." The Drakthul turned one of its independent eyes toward Amanda, watching her with what looked like curiosity rather than suspicion. When she moved closer to examine a particularly bad scar, the creature carefully shifted position to give her a better angle. "It's cooperating with the examination," Amanda said in wonder. "This level of intelligence and social awareness is incredible." From the platform above, Threshkar was having what could only be described as a complete breakdown. "This is impossible. The Drakthul does not cooperate. It destroys. It kills. It conquers." "Maybe that was just because it was in pain," Kyle suggested, not bothering to look up at the war commander. "Animals do strange things when they're hurt all the time." One of the Zephyrian officers leaned over to whisper urgently to Threshkar. "Sir, should we activate the emergency containment protocols? Release the sedation gas?" "No," Threshkar snapped. "This demonstration must work. All species fear the Drakthul." Kyle reached into his jacket and pulled out a nutrition bar from his emergency supplies. He unwrapped it slowly, making sure the creature could see what he was doing. The Drakthul's eyes focused on the food with intense interest. "When's the last time you had anything to eat?" Kyle asked. The creature made a soft, sad sound. "Probably not recently," Amanda said, checking her scanner. "I'm reading severe nutritional deficiencies. They've been starving it." Kyle broke the nutrition bar into small pieces and offered one to the Drakthul. The creature delicately took the food with the tip of one claw and brought it to its mouth. As it chewed, its armor plates brightened noticeably. Good? Kyle asked. The Drakthul made a rumbling sound that definitely seemed positive. It looked hopefully at the rest of the nutrition bar. The Drakthul does not eat gifts from prey. Threshkar shouted. It feeds on terror and death. Actually, Amanda said, studying her readings, it appears to be omnivorous with a preference for plant proteins. Those diamond-hard teeth? They're perfect for processing tough vegetation. The claws are designed for digging and foraging, not just fighting. Kyle fed another piece to the creature, smiling as it accepted the food gratefully. You're not really a weapon at all, are you? You're just a big, smart animal that got hurt and confused. The Drakthul made that musical sound again, and this time Amanda's scanner picked up more complex patterns. Kyle, it's not just trying to communicate, it's learning our language. The vocal patterns are adapting to match human speech rhythms. Threshkar activated his personal communicator and began barking orders to someone elsewhere on the ship. Bring the backup creatures. Deploy the shadow hunters. If the Drakthul will not perform, we have other options. Kyle heard this and stood up, his expression becoming serious for the first time since entering the arena. You have more creatures you're torturing? The Zephyrian Empire has many weapons at its disposal, Threshkar replied coldly. The Drakthul heard the anger in Kyle's voice and rose to its full height, positioning itself between Kyle and the Zephyrian platform. Its armor plates shifted to darker colors and its claws extended slightly, not in aggression, but in protection. It's defending you, Amanda said in amazement. Kyle, it sees you as part of its social group now. Kyle placed a hand on one of the creature's massive arms. It's okay, big guy, I'm not afraid of them. But the Drakthul wasn't backing down. It had spent its entire life being forced to hurt others, and now it had found someone who treated it with kindness. The protective instincts that the Zephyrians had tried to twist into aggression were finally being expressed naturally. You want to know what makes humans different? Kyle called up to Threshkar. We don't see monsters, we see individuals, we see potential friends, we see creatures that need help. Your sentiment is touching, Threshkar sneered, but it will not save you when the shadow hunters arrive. As if summoned by his words, new openings began to appear in the arena walls. Kyle could hear movement in the tunnels beyond, but these sounds were different from the Drakthul's earlier approach. These were the sounds of creatures moving in coordinated packs. The Drakthul heard them too, and moved even closer to Kyle and Amanda. Its eyes were scanning the tunnel entrances and its body language had become alert and protective. Kyle, Amanda said nervously, my scanner is picking up multiple contacts. Whatever's coming, there are a lot of them. The first shadow hunter emerged from a tunnel on the far side of the arena. It was smaller than the Drakthul, about the size of a large horse, but it moved with fluid grace that suggested incredible speed. Its body seemed to bend light around it, making it difficult to look at directly. Then another appeared, and another. Within moments, Kyle counted at least a dozen of the creatures forming a circle around them. The shadow hunters work as a pack, Threshkar announced with satisfaction. They are faster than thought, quieter than death. Even the Drakthul cannot stand against them in numbers. But the Drakthul wasn't backing down. Instead, it moved, to place Kyle and Amanda directly behind it, using its body as a shield. It made a series of sounds toward the shadow hunters, and Kyle was surprised to hear what sounded like actual communication. It's talking to them, Amanda said, watching, her scanner in fascination. The linguistic patterns are similar to what it was using with us, but adapted for their species. The shadow hunters paused, tilting their heads to listen. Some of them made answering sounds. Kyle couldn't understand the exchange, but the body language was clear enough. The Drakthul was trying to negotiate. Impossible, Threshkar muttered. The shadow hunters have never communicated with other weapons. Maybe they're not weapons either, Kyle suggested. Maybe they're just animals that have been forced to fight. The conversation between the Drakthul and the shadow hunters continued. For several minutes, Kyle watched as some of the smaller creatures moved closer, examining him and Amanda with curious eyes rather than predatory stares. Finally, one of the shadow hunters approached Kyle directly. It was beautiful up close, with fur that shifted, between silver and black like liquid metal. Its eyes were large and intelligent, and when it looked at Kyle, he saw no aggression there. Only curiosity. Kyle slowly extended his hand, the same gesture he had used with the Drakthul. The shadow hunter sniffed his fingers carefully, then made a soft, chirping sound. "I think it likes you," Amanda said. Kyle scratched gently behind what he hoped were the creature's ears. The shadow hunter leaned into the touch, and its fur began to show flecks of gold. "You're all just animals, aren't you?" Kyle said, looking around at the assembled creatures. "Animals that have been hurt and forced to fight when all you really want is to be left alone." From above, Threshkar's voice had become a desperate shriek. "Kill them, all of you! That is what you were made for." But the creatures in the arena weren't listening to him anymore. They were listening to Kyle, who spoke to them with kindness instead of commands, who offered food instead of pain, who saw them as living beings instead of weapons. And for the first time in their lives, they had a choice about what to do next. The arena had become something Threshkar had never seen before. Instead of a demonstration of Zephyrian power, it looked like a peaceful gathering. Kyle sat surrounded by shadow hunters, while the Drakthul rested nearby, its massive head close to the ground so Amanda could continue her examination of the surgical scars. "The bone healing around the implant site suggests they've been modified multiple times," Amanda reported, running her scanner over a particularly nasty scar. "Each surgery would have been agony without proper anesthesia." The Drakthul made a low, sad sound. One of the shadow hunters moved closer and gently nuzzled the larger creature's arm in what was clearly a gesture of comfort. "They're friends," Kyle realized. "All this time you've been keeping each other sane down in those holding cells, haven't you?" Several of the shadow hunters chirped in response. Kyle had pulled out all of his emergency food supplies and was sharing them among the creatures. Each one accepted the offerings gratefully, and their various forms of camouflage shifted to show what Amanda was documenting as positive emotional states. From his platform, Threshkar watched his ultimate weapons having what could only be described as a picnic with their supposed victims. His entire worldview was collapsing before his eyes. "This cannot be happening," he muttered to his officers. 800 years of breeding programs, genetic manipulation, neural conditioning. They cannot simply choose to disobey. "Sir," one of the officers said hesitantly, "perhaps we should consider that the humans might have a point. These creatures do seem more intelligent than we previously believed." Threshkar spun on him with fury. "Intelligence is irrelevant. They are weapons. They exist to serve the Empire." But down in the arena, Kyle was proving that the creatures were much more than weapons. He had managed to establish basic communication with several of the shadow hunters, and the Drakthul was actively participating in the conversations, apparently serving as a translator between species. "This is remarkable," Amanda said, reviewing her recordings. "They have their own social structure, their own language, their own culture. The Zephyrians didn't create weapons. They enslaved an entire civilization." Kyle looked up at Threshkar with an expression of disgust. "How many species? Have you done this to? How many intelligent beings have you turned into your personal army?" "As many as necessary," Threshkar shouted back. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. Only the strong survive. Only the powerful prosper." "No," Kyle said, standing up and brushing sand from his uniform. "Only the cruel do what you've done, and that ends now." The Drakthul rose to its full height beside Kyle, its armor plates showing the bright gold patterns that indicated determination. The shadow hunters formed a loose circle around them, no longer hiding in the tunnel entrances, but standing openly in the light. "You have no authority here, human," Threshkar snarled. "This is a Zephyrian ship in Zephyrian space. You are prisoners, not negotiators." "Actually," Kyle said with a smile, "I think our status just changed." He activated his communication device and spoke into it clearly. "Amanda, are you recording this?" "Every word," she confirmed, holding up her scanner. "Full documentation of everything we've discovered." Kyle nodded and spoke into his communicator again, but this time he wasn't talking to Amanda. "Captain Rodriguez," This is Ambassador Morrison. Please inform Earth Command that we've discovered multiple enslaved species aboard the Zephyrian flagship. We're going to need a full xenobiology team, and probably a few lawyers. Threshkar's eyes widened as he realized the implications. You cannot broadcast from this ship. Our communications are blocked. Your communications are blocked, Kyle agreed. But you didn't account for the fact that these creatures have been trying to get a message out for centuries. Amanda held up her scanner, which was now displaying complex waveforms. The Drakthul and Shadow Hunters have been using subsonic communications to stay in contact across the ship. Kyle's communicator is just amplifying their natural frequency range. We've been broadcasting everything for the last 20 minutes, Kyle continued. The location of this ship, the condition of the imprisoned creatures, and a complete record of this conversation. The Drakthul made a series of sounds that Kyle was beginning to recognize as agreement. Several of the Shadow Hunters joined in, creating a harmony that resonated through the ship's hull. What are they doing? Threshkar demanded. Calling for help, Amanda said, watching her scanner in amazement. Kyle, there are more creatures throughout this ship, a lot more, and they're all responding to the call. Deep within the Zephyrian flagship, Kyle could hear answering calls. Different voices, different species, but all of them carrying the same message. The message that freedom was possible. Threshkar was frantically pressing controls on his platform, trying to activate containment protocols and emergency lockdowns, but the creatures had learned to work together over the centuries of imprisonment. They knew every system on the ship, and they were coordinating their escape. This is treason against the Empire, Threshkar screamed. No, Kyle said calmly. This is justice. The first of the other creatures began to arrive in the arena. Kyle saw beings he couldn't even name, each one unique and beautiful in its own way. Some flew, some crawled, some seemed to phase between solid and liquid states. But all of them showed the same signs Amanda had documented in the original prisoners: intelligence, personality, the capacity for friendship and cooperation. How many species? Kyle asked Amanda. At least 40 that I can identify, she replied, her voice filled with awe. Kyle, this isn't just a ship, it's a prison arc. They've been collecting intelligent species for centuries. The arena was filling with liberated creatures, but instead of chaos, Kyle saw organization. The different species were working together, helping each other, sharing information about the ship's systems and the location of other prisoners. Threshkar and his officers were trapped on their platform as creatures that had once been there. Weapons took control of their own ship. Some of the flying species had positioned themselves between the Zephyrians and the exits. Others were accessing computer terminals and disabling security systems. The human fleet will arrive within the hour, Kyle announced. When they do, these people will be given the choice of returning to their homeworlds or finding new places to live in peace. The days of enslaving intelligent species for your military are over. You don't understand, Threshkar said, his voice now desperate rather than angry. Without the weapons programs, the Zephyrian Empire will be vulnerable. Our enemies will destroy us. Kyle looked around at the freed creatures, then back at the war commander. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started enslaving people. Maybe you should have tried making friends instead of making weapons. The Drakthul moved to stand beside Kyle, gently placing one massive claw on the human shoulder in a gesture of protection and friendship. The Shadow Hunters gathered around them both, their liquid metal fur showing patterns of gold and silver that spoke of joy and freedom. Besides, Kyle added with a grin, you're looking at this all wrong. You think you're losing weapons. But what you're really losing is the fear that made you need weapons in the first place. Amanda finished her final scans and looked up with tears in her eyes. Kyle, some of these species have been prisoners for over 2,000 years. Entire generations have lived and died in captivity. But not anymore, Kyle said softly. He turned to address all the creatures in the arena, speaking clearly so his words would carry throughout the ship. You're free now, all of you. And no, one will ever force you to fight again. The response was a sound unlike anything Kyle had ever heard. Dozens of species, each with their own voice, joined together in what could only be described as a song of celebration. The harmony filled the arena, echoed through the corridors of the ship and carried out into space itself. It was the sound of freedom. And as Kyle listened to that beautiful, complex song, he couldn't help but smile. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy was simply treating others with kindness and respect, even when they had claws that could cut through battleship armor.